Right friends, welcome back to English Comprehension and Vocabulary. This is the 49th session and today's topic is Economic Times editorial of 3rd April on shell companies. There were some raids on shell companies recently. In that context, we are going to deliberate on what is a shell company, what is the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. All those things we are going to deliberate today. And on Tuesday, this Economic Times editorial, punish drunk drivers, not legal business. This editorial of Economic Times we are going to deliberate on 11th April Tuesday, because tomorrow being Friday we will have the discussion on banking awareness current affairs at 12:30 hours, and on Monday at 12:30 hours we will have English made simple. So, this is as per the timetable which we prescribed. Monday will be English made simple, that means understanding various sentences in the right perspective. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday English comprehension, Friday current affairs of banking awareness, that is also very important. So, this is the schedule from 12:30 onwards. And now for today's discussion, separate illegality and corporate structure. So, here I would like to make you familiar with certain words: tax avoidance, tax evasion. Tax avoidance is perfectly legal. It is minimizing tax liability by taking unfair advantage of the shortcomings in the tax laws. It is unfair, unethical, but it is legal. Basically, benefit of the loopholes in the law will be taken. So, people will take shelter under the loopholes of the law, and this is tax avoidance. And tax evasion is totally illegal, criminal, it is violating the tax laws, it is totally fraud and deliberate concealment of material facts, and imprisonment and penalty can be imposed here. So, tax avoidance is different, tax evasion is different. So, normally the people will try to take shelter under various gaps in the law or various loopholes in the law, that is the tax avoidance. And till date people are routing their investments through destinations like Mauritius or destinations like Cyprus, because of the reason tax conditions are favorable there. So, to minimize their tax liability, to avoid tax, they are resorting to such practices. And to avoid that, recently government has taken a decision to modify double taxation avoidance agreements with several countries, and modified double taxation avoidance agreements with several countries came into force from 1st of April, please understand. So, look at the next one, money laundering and terrorist financing. This is quite often we come across. There is one international organization, Financial Action Task Force, its secretariat is in Paris, and here Financial Action Task Force, the primary task is to look at this money laundering and terrorist financing. So, money laundering means transaction of money through illegal channels, underhand deals. So, they will not come to the legal channels, they will not come to the banking sector, they will not come to the organized financial system, they will not come to the stock markets, they will be underhand the deals. And here transfer takes place through imports, exports. That is one route. Other route is Hawala route. Hawala means money. If I give 10 crores of rupees in Mumbai to the Hawala person, then he will deliver in Dubai by subtracting something, right. So, here the point to note is, this organization Financial Action Task Force is behind money laundering and terrorist financing, because this black money goes to terrorists. So, please understand, India is member of FATF, that is why India brought Money Laundering Act, and our KYC guidelines in banking and financial system are basically to satisfy money laundering guidelines. Then All of you are familiar with Panama. At the time, several secret accounts were revealed in tax destinations, or you can say tax havens. Tax havens, several illegal accounts were disclosed through Panama leaks, and several shell companies were established abroad. Please look into this news item. Here, offshore destination, the country is British Virgin Islands, or you can say Panama. You see, the population of British Virgin Islands is just 28,000, and there are 1,13,000 companies. For the population of 28,000, 1,13,000 companies were registered, and most of them are shell companies, right. So, this shell companies, this nomenclature or the name gives some bad connotation, and these countries are famous for this shell companies, and what happens is shell companies will be established there, and automatically money will be diverted through those countries to back to India, which is known as round tripping, right. Having learnt this, these tax havens or offshore destinations are famous for shell companies or brass plate companies with nominee directors, right. Having learnt this, let us go back to the passage. This passage is about not all shell companies have shady business. Normally, when we say shell company, it will have some underground business. To avoid tax, it might have established. So, if people are talking about a shell company, it gives wrong connotation, and people will presume that it is for illegal purpose. But there are some legitimate purposes also which are done by shell companies, and this editorial argues strongly. There are some shell companies which are established for legitimate businesses. Let us separate legitimate business with illegitimate business. Wherever some shady business is there, then you take up, but do not touch the genuine shell companies, right. Here the first sentence is, not all shell companies have shady business. And before going ahead, what is the description of shell company? Shell company description is, it is a non-trading firm formed as a vehicle with the purpose of, that means literally the business activities are not involved here. Non-trading firm, trading will not be there, but what is the purpose? The purpose is, these three are legitimate purpose, but this one is with some ulterior motive. Shell companies can be formed in four ways. One is for raising funds before starting operations. These shell companies will be formed to raise funds before starting operations. So, that is genuine. Then attempting a takeover. When they are attempting a takeover of bigger company, they can form shell company. Going public, before going public issue also, they will start a shell company. So, these three are genuine cases, real cases. But you see the fourth one. The fourth one is for illegal business. Please look into this. Choose a tax haven like Cayman Islands. Choose a tax haven where taxes are 0.5%, 0.25%, where taxes are less. Please choose the tax haven. Then create a corporation there. In Cayman Islands, create a corporation. Subsequently, nominate a person which is known as a nominee beneficiary. In India, the persons will be real beneficiaries. They will be in India. They will nominate a person for the namesake by paying something there. So, he is nominee there, nominee beneficiary, not the real beneficiary. So, like this shell companies are created in places like Cayman Islands, places like Mauritius, like Bahamas, like Panama, like British Virgin Islands. So, with the ulterior motive they are formulated, right. So, Indian money will go to that tax haven, it will be legalized there, they will pay hardly 0.25% or 0.5% tax, and again that will come back to India as foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment. So, this is known as round tripping, and shell companies are used for round tripping of India's black money, and in most of the cases, in 80% of the cases, the purpose of shell company is that only, but there are legitimate purposes also. These things I have explained, and this editorial says separate legitimate functions from the illegal operations. Don't brand everyone as illegal. Whoever opened a shell company, please don't brand them as illegal. That is the essence of this editorial. So, the news report is the Enforcement Directorate has arrested 2 persons as part of its crackdown on 500 shell companies generating huge amounts of black money. Under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, this decision was taken. This is with the suspicion that dubious and suspicious firms are believed to be the backbone of this black money in the country. So, to understand that, please understand this. This is creation of shell company, and in 80% of the cases this is created for illegitimate activities, and recently Enforcement Directorate raided 500 shell companies, right. Here shady business, in the first sentence itself you have shell companies and shady business. Shady business means dishonest or illegal activities. Dishonest or illegal activities is shady business. So, not all companies are doing shady business, that is the first sentence. The threat of arbitrariness and excess hangs over Indian business today. The threat of arbitrariness and excess hangs over Indian business today. So, what is arbitrary? Arbitrary means without following rules and regulations. If somebody is taking decision as per his whims and fancies, no rules and regulations. If I want to implement something, I can implement. So, arbitrariness is basically with the personal whims and fancies. If some decision is taken, there will not be any reason sometimes. So, here the threat of arbitrariness, taking decisions randomly, taking decisions without rationale, and excess hangs over Indian business today. So, Indian business is at the point of this arbitrariness. So, here hang means all of you are familiar, hanging of people. Other one is here, this word is used with the negative connotation, negative meaning only it conveys. That means the arbitrariness or random application of rules and regulations, or sometimes without applying rationale, sometimes without rules and regulations, when somebody is following, that is arbitrariness, and excess hangs over Indian business today. That means it is threatening Indian business, or it is at the neck of Indian business. After the finance bill has armed junior taxmen, in the finance bill what happened? Now they need not record any reason, the tax people need not record any reason, they can directly seize and they can directly go for the raid. They need not record the reasons. That is why he used this. After the finance bill has armed junior taxmen with discretionary powers. of search and seizure and with the ongoing crackdown on shell companies. So, the threat of arbitrariness randomly, that means the Indian businesses are at the point of random action, then at the same time arbitrary action by this taxman. So, finance bill has given much more powers. They gave discretionary powers of searching some property, seizure, seizing the property. What is the discretionary? Discretionary means it is decided by the officials, not fixed by the rules. In democracies, discretionary powers must be less. In democracies, discretionary powers must be less, because discretionary powers are decided by officials and not fixed by rules or regulations. Then there is an increase in the discretionary expenditure by the government. So, discretionary means decided by the officials, not fixed by the rules. Now, the discretionary powers of tax people increased. The discretionary powers of income tax people increased because of the amendments to the finance bill, because they can come and search your property without recording any reason for the action. Then seizure, this is action of confiscating property, taking over property. So, that is the seizure. And crackdown, what is the meaning of crackdown? Crackdown means a series of severe measures to restrict undesirable or illegal behavior is a crackdown. Quite often we hear the news that there is a crackdown on there is a crackdown on the tax evaders. The meaning is there will be series of severe measures on the people whoever are evading tax. So, please differentiate between tax evasion and tax avoidance. I explained you at the beginning. So, here the powers increased recently, that is why they are resorting to arbitrary actions. The recent crackdown on shell companies is one example. So, now powers increased enormously and the tax people are resorting to discretionary powers, and discretionary powers are being used by tax authorities for searching and seizure of the property. So, they will increase further because of the amendment which was recently made. The term shell companies is loaded. What is the meaning of loaded? Loaded means it automatically gives some bias action. Loaded means it is biased towards a particular outcome. When something is biased towards a particular outcome, we call it as loaded. The term shell companies is loaded. That means the term itself has got some bias. We have already seen shell companies can be for legitimate purposes also, though most of the companies are for illegitimate purpose. Here the term, if somebody says the shell companies, the word meaning is biased towards the bad thing. Some nefarious intent or the other is implied in its very nomenclature. Nomenclature means the name itself implies some nefarious design or nefarious intent, that is morally bad intent, criminal intent. If someone says a shell company, the name itself indicates there is some criminal intent, some morally bad intent like that. Nefarious, please understand that morally bad intent or criminal intent is known as nefarious. Several times you come into this. Please differentiate between ulterior motive and nefarious. Nefarious is morally bad behavior, criminal behavior. So, here the word itself shows that the nomenclature is devising names for things. The name itself shows some sort of bad thought process into the minds. So, it intends, or the name itself intends some nefarious intent. So, it is loaded means the name itself is biased towards some immoral act or criminal design, right. So, look at the next one. The next one is, this is all companies without an operational business. I have already told you, shell companies are the companies without operational business or without real trade. So, all companies without an operational business are not meant for ulterior purposes. As I have already told you at the beginning, the name of shell company, when I am explaining shell company, I told you that there are some legitimate functions also. So, he is explaining the same thing now. All companies without an operational business are not meant for ulterior purposes. What is ulterior? Ulterior means intentionally something is hidden. Ulterior means intention is there, bad intention is there inside, and I pretend something outside, but some bad intention is there inside. The actions of some of our neighboring countries are sometimes with the ulterior motive to destabilize our country. If you take example Pakistan, it says that it is not sheltering terrorists, but most of the terrorist attacks are coming from across the border, so that you can say they are telling one thing and internally something else. So, you can say Pakistani designs are ulterior in nature, telling one thing and keeping inside mind other thing, that is ulterior. And then let us come back to the passage. All companies without an operational business are not meant for ulterior purposes. They are all not meant for ulterior purposes. One company's purpose, for example, he is telling about various things, what the shell companies will do. For example, could be to accumulate shares in a takeover target. They are accumulating shares to take over a company in future, and as I have already told you, for such a type of purpose also shell companies can be established. So, one company's purpose, for example, could be to accumulate shares in a takeover target without triggering an open offer till the relevant threshold is reached, fully compliance with the law. So, he is talking about after the threshold is reached, without triggering an open offer till the relevant threshold is reached. So, sometimes what the shell companies will do, they will accumulate certain shares, let it be 10%, let the threshold be 10%. Here what happens, if they want to take over some company, there they will purchase shares initially through shell company, they will accumulate shares. Once they reach 10% or 20% threshold, they will trigger an open offer, right. So, fully in compliance with the law. So, the activity of shell company in this particular case is fully in compliance with the law. So, trigger means an event or situation that causes something to start, or normally initiation for something bad. So, trigger means it initiates something to start. So, before triggering the open offer, before advertising publicly to purchase the shares, initially they will purchase the shares through shell company, and after they reach one threshold. What is the meaning of threshold? Threshold is the level at which something begins to happen. After they reach the threshold, then automatically they will go for public offer, they will go for open offer, right. So, this is here you see, without triggering an open offer till the relevant threshold is reached. This is fully in compliance with the law. The basic point is, by the time if I say if I say shell company, it gives wrong connotation, it is loaded, that means it is biased towards illegal activity, but there are some legal activities also, please understand. Next one is, another could be, that means he is telling another example of legitimate purpose or legal purpose of shell company. Another could be used to hold intellectual property licensed to various companies across the world can be held by a company, by a shell company. Yet another's purpose, he is talking about another issue where shell companies can be used for legal purpose, might be to hold a company meant to be spun off after meeting some financial targets. So, here what is the meaning of spin off? Spin off means to turn a subsidiary into a new or separate company. To turn a subsidiary into a new or separate company. So, sometimes shell companies, they hold a company basically to spin off after meeting the financial targets. It will be made a separate company. There are any number of legitimate purposes for creating and operating so called shell companies. So, there are several legitimate purposes, that means what is the meaning of legitimate? That is as per the law or rules. So, there are several legitimate purposes, basically shell companies are established. There are some legitimate purposes are also there, no doubt. Some illegal functions also may take place, but why are you cracking down on, or you can say, why are you targeting legitimate companies? Right? The reform that is required to prevent such companies from being used to anonymize undesirable transactions is a mandatory requirement for companies to declare their beneficial owner on the lines of the reform brought about by David Cameron government in Britain. So, if you have any doubt, please ask for who is the beneficiary owner. I have told you at the beginning, these shell companies may have this nominee. Real beneficiary owner may be something different, nominee is something different. So, these shell companies will have nominee. You make it a mandatory thing, to reveal who are the beneficial owner. Please make it mandatory, or in our country, please make it mandatory to declare the beneficial owner. Who is the beneficial owner? Please make it a law to declare beneficial owner. At present, a lot of anonymity may be there, because the beneficial owner may not be known at present. Anonymous. What is the meaning of anonymous? Action done by someone, but the name is not known or not made public. An anonymous caller to the police informed about some extremist activities. An anonymous caller to the police informed about some extremist activities. So, anonymous, please understand the meaning in the right way. So, at present, rules permit the beneficial owner can be anonymous. So, please change the law to make it mandatory to declare beneficial owner, as was done in UK. Then mandatory means must be done because of law of the land. Then G20 has been trying to get member countries and other jurisdictions to adopt the requirement of a unique legal entity identifier. So, just like Aadhaar card. Aadhaar card means unique identity for us. Now, G20 has been trying. What is the meaning of has been trying? For quite some time, it is trying, it is not yet completed. That is why it is used has been trying. The G20 has been trying, that means it is not yet completed. Has been trying to get member countries and other jurisdictions to adopt the requirement of a unique legal entity identifier. At present, we have Aadhaar. Aadhaar is a unique identity for the persons. Similarly, for each business entity also, it must have unique identity. If all companies and persons have a unique identity, just like Aadhaar number, the beneficial ownership can be traced. When companies have got unique identity, then the beneficial ownership can be traced along a hierarchy of holding and cross-holding companies. Holding company, cross-holding company, there will be hierarchy. What is meant by hierarchy? Hierarchy, all of you are familiar with hierarchy. This is the in fact a system in which members of an organization or society are ranked according to relative status or authority. If you take one organization, general manager, deputy general manager, chief manager, like that designations are there. These are example of hierarchy, right? So, here if unique identity is there, you can trace anybody. Then if a company is identified as carrying out money laundering, if money laundering is done by a company, the beneficiary of that activity would become apparent if such a reform is carried out. So, you will come to know about the real beneficiary. If the unique identity is established, you can easily fish out, or you can say you can easily trace the real beneficiary. At this time it is not possible because unique identifier is not there. So, the point is to separate illegal transactions from the corporate structure in which it is carried out and to penalize illegality. The issue is, please separate illegality from legality. Please separate illegality from legality, and at the same time do not spoil the entire corporate structure. Corporate structure has got so many legitimate purposes. Do not ride the persons, do not strike off all shell companies, and please separate legal entity from illegal entity, right. So, please separate legal entity from illegal entity and do not spoil the entire corporate structure. What is meant by damned? Here, be doomed to misfortune or failure or criticize strongly. Do not criticize, do not bring failure or do not bring misfortune to the entire corporate structure. That is the meaning of this paragraph. So, please separate legality from illegality, unnecessarily do not blame. Paradoxically, that means government is telling something, paradoxically means something opposite is happening. Government is telling, and government is recently came too strong on shell companies. Some of the companies were raided. But you see, paradoxically is to be used when some contradictory point is there, right. So, here when someone says about or lectures about black money, when someone lectures about black money, subsequently he take bribe, then you can say that is paradoxically. So, the paradoxically, the twin reforms of anonymous electoral bonds and removing existing cap on corporate donations to political parties encourages the setting up of shell companies for the specific purpose of funding parties. Paradoxically, you are telling something good, at the same time your actions may take the form of bad tomorrow. That is why he used paradoxically. What are those two things? One is government announced electoral bonds, anonymous electoral bonds. So, these electoral bonds can be paid, and here anonymity is there, anonymous electoral bonds. Then second one is removing existing cap on corporate donations. Previously, there was a cap of 7.5% of profit for the past 3 years. That was the maximum limit which a company can donate to a political party. Now that is taken out. So, you are telling on one side you are cracking down on shell companies, at the same time your actions are opposite. That is why it is used paradoxically, right. So, here paradoxically means absurd or self contradictory way. The strength of capitalism is paradoxically also its a weakness. This is one example. So, paradoxically the meaning is you are telling one thing and your actions are exactly opposite. You can say paradoxically, right. So, here it says do not put all the shell companies on one brand. There are some legitimate purposes. Do not spoil entire corporate structure. Do not raid everybody. Please separate legitimate business from illegitimate business. For that, follow unique business identity just like Aadhaar. With that, you can get the real beneficiary. So, that way illegal activities can be reduced. Right friends, 3rd April article, this is punish drunk drivers, not legal business. This we are going to deliberate on Tuesday 11th April, tomorrow at 12:30. Please do join for important lecture, banking awareness, current affairs. Every Friday you will have banking affairs, current affairs at 12:30 hours every Friday. Right. So, I once again reiterate, Monday English made simple at 12:30, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday comprehension, Friday banking awareness, current affairs at 12:30 hours. Right friends, have a nice day. Thank you.